Hello, Molly. Hello, Nikhil. Welcome. Alex, seeing folks coming in. If you can't hear me, let me know, but I think you can hear me okay. Let me get the chat open here. Cool. Oh, Alex, looks like you joined twice. Cool. Maybe that's what happens when you share screens or something. Wow, good turnout already. We're going to have a lot of fun talking about email. Cool. See some folks from my team joining, trying to get some extra credit with the boss. I get what you're talking about there. All right. Cool. Just wait another minute or so, and then we'll switch to some questions that folks can put in the chat. To answer for us. Okay. Cool. Hello, Alex Cooper. We got a couple people named Alex in here. That's cool. All right. So the folks who are coming in, we're going to be looking at these questions to start with. If you guys and folks, everyone can answer whichever ones you want to or you're comfortable with. Could be good to get things going. I'm particularly interested in the fourth question here about deliverability problems. Are you having any particular issues right now? And if you could spell out those issues, we'll be sure to address them. We have a plenty of time for Q&A as well towards the end. So, don't hesitate. Also, where are you calling in from? Are you into cold email? Are you doing mainly opt-in email? You're doing both? What email services are you using? Things like that. It could be very interesting for you to answer. Let us know. Hey, is anyone commenting in the chat and I can't see it, or are people just very, very shy today?
It says chat is disabled. Someone in the Q&A mentioned that.
Oh, what happened there? Oh, it says chat is disabled. That would Mac, thanks for pointing that out. Let's see, how can I enable this chat? Let's have a look here. Oh, can you help me enable the chat? Let's see. Just give me 1 second here, everybody. We'll get the chat enabled. Ah, there we go. Oh no, people are coming to the Q&A still. Right. Okay, it says just use the Q&A. I guess there might be some sort of problem with our chat. Let me see. Okay, how about now? Try it now. I think maybe I fixed it. Can someone try in the chat? And then we can kick off this webinar. There we go. Thank you. Sorry, guys. That was totally on me. I'm trying to blame everyone else. Typical boss behavior. Thank you, Mamit and Mac, for pointing that out. Cool. Detroit, Michigan. Oh, Anish, I know you. Anish, we did a lot of cold emailing together. Chrisley, make sure to reach out to Anish later to check in with him. Felipe. Hey, Felipe, how you doing? It's been a while. Hope you're well. There we go. Now there's some life here. I was like, geez, we have the quietest group on the planet. Turns out that I just don't know how to click the Zoom buttons. All right, we're 5 minutes in. I think we should kick off. What do you think? Should we kick off? Yeah, let's do it. Cool. So the real question is, how deep down the email deliverability rabbit hole have you gone? We talk to companies all the time that are in deliverability issues, some sort of problem. Sender's focus is just on email deliverability. And we sent maybe 30 million cold emails in the last 12 months. We care about the full puzzle of email deliverability. There are a lot of various service providers that are interested in setting up multiple domains or doing this, that, the other thing, kind of one trick things. We're one of the only companies out there that cares a lot about all the sending across all the places that you're sending from, how all the pieces fit together. And I'm just the CEO, but we have team members that are technicians that all they do all day is solve email deliverability problems. And our whole goal as a company, including part of the goal of this call, is to end the rabbit hole digging for you. So today can hopefully be a day when your rabbit hole digging ends. We can jump into it. So this kind of annoying looking chart I took from Wikipedia. This explains a little bit about how email works. And these little things here, this MSA, MTA, MX, MDA, MUA, blah, 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 all these things. The point of this slide is really to tell you that email itself is designed in such a way to be delivered. That's kind of the point of email. Email is to send and be delivered. It's meant to be relatively simple from the sender perspective and the recipient perspective. So email wants to be delivered. All these abbreviations, the MUA, MSA, MTA, MX, they're computer systems of various types that work basically for you. They want to help your email get to the right place, and they're here to sort of guide it along the process. You don't really have to deal with all this stuff in very much detail to get an email delivered, assuming that everything is configured correctly from the start. So it's sort of like if your paperwork is in order, your emails will get through. There are really only 4 elements of email that are generally under your control. There's domains, there's IPs, there's DNS, and then there's your own email usage. So if everything's so simple and email itself wants to be delivered, why so much trouble? Why does a company like Senders have to exist? Well, it's simple, but there are a lot of steps and lots of room for errors and issues that come with each. And then email itself is kind of an open thing. So email's open, it's ubiquitous, meaning almost everyone on the planet that does business has an email address. It's almost free. It's used by bad people. It's used by good people. It's regulated by government in the form of spam laws and different kinds of judgments that have come down about how email can and can't be used appropriately or inappropriately. And it's also regulated by private companies. So one of the things that we face a lot and folks come to us for is issues with Google, for example, or Microsoft. Those are private companies that are trying to regulate email in a certain way. So bad people have made it hard for good people to send and have email delivered. So even though email itself is so simple and email wants to be delivered, the bad folks over the last 20, 30 years have come in and made it really hard for good people to send. So here are the 3 problems sort of lined up. Bad people imitate good people to get their bad stuff delivered. This is what you call spoofing. So someone pretends to be me to email someone I know to get them to click on a link. That's a bad person imitating a good person. In this story, I'm the good person. The problem too is bad people use good people to get their bad stuff delivered. Meaning, so I'm actually sending the email, but somewhere in between, someone is sort of taking over my email and maybe replacing a link with something bad. So that's sort of, they're using me to deliver something bad. Or they're using my email itself. They're not even pretending to be me. They're actually they've broken into my email account and they're emailing as me. That's the second problem. And the third one is there's just no national registration of good people. So algorithms just kind of make an educated guess. They're like, it seems good. This email seems okay. Seems bad. There's a concept, I don't know if it's in economics or what, called the tragedy of the commons. And the tragedy of the commons describes a scenario where overuse or abuse by some folks makes it harder for everyone to enjoy and make use of a resource. I think the classic example is if you had a bunch of land to graze sheep on and anyone can graze freely, if someone overgrazed, they would not, the land would not be useful to the other people. So email in a certain sense has a little bit of this tragedy of the commons where it's free, it's accessible, it has all these great qualities, but it's used by bad people, used by good people, and everyone's kind of trying to make it work for themselves, making it harder for everyone. So let's take a sidestep before we dig into a bunch of technical stuff. We're going to get deeper into this stuff. We're going to talk about IPs and domains and all this stuff. But first, we're going to start with a little story. Question for the chat here. Are you with Kendrick or with Drake? Are you totally confused what I'm talking about? Felipe says Drizzy. I'm assuming that's short for Drake. Whatever. I don't see any other one else in the chat. Drake, come on. Okay, that's interesting. We got a Kendrick person. Good. We got some life there. So those who don't know, the American rapper Kendrick Lamar and the Canadian rapper Drake are in a feud. They're in a beef. They're beefing with each other. Many diss tracks have gone back and forth, and recently things have taken a more scary turn. Drake's house in Toronto has been attacked, and a security guard has been injured. It's very serious. So this is Drake. I borrowed this from some website. I didn't spend any time photoshopping Drake on top of this photo of his mansion, I can assure you. But Drake has a 15,000 square foot house that already has high security. I mean, he's got expensive art in there. He's got jewels. Of course, Drake has his Grammys in there, which are priceless. But now security has gotten even tighter. And apparently, Drake likes caviar. So it's no surprise to anyone that a man with a house like this also likes caviar. So let's imagine that he likes it a lot, that he eats it with almost every meal, and he likes the really expensive stuff. So this is the most expensive caviar that I could find on the internet. It's a Siberian albino sturgeon caviar. The fish takes 10 years to raise. Once the fish is dehydrated, once the eggs are dehydrated, they sprinkle it with 22 karat gold edible flakes. You can mix it into pasta. You can mix it with risotto. It's probably one of the world's most expensive foods. It is $568 per teaspoon. So you can imagine if Drake really liked this on his scrambled eggs in the morning, that'd be a very expensive scrambled eggs. You're talking like $3, $4 in eggs and then $600 in caviar. Pretty wild. So imagine that you are the person who supplies this caviar to Drake. You know that security is super tight all the way through, but you're using a common system, using UPS or the mail system to get it through. But you also know that a customs agent could stop the delivery from getting through when it's trying to get into Canada, or a thief could intercept the delivery, add something to the caviar that's harmful, replace the caviar with a lesser quality caviar, or cause some sort of other change that would make Drake's security team question its validity and either send it to the dumpster or, send it back, basically. If you don't think, if you're like, guys, this is too far. This is too far. Who commits crimes with caviar? Well, you'd be wrong. As you can see here, a caviar distributor has pleaded guilty to a multi-million-dollar customs fraud scheme. So long story short, the responsibility for getting this caviar sent and delivered to Drake falls on you. I know you're not sending kilograms of expensive caviar, but your emails are very, very precious. And I know your email isn't being spot checked by Drake's personal chef, but it's being closely scrutinized by all sorts of email security systems it passes through. And ultimately, it's your job to make sure that your emails are in the best possible shape when you send them so they won't be rejected. So what does that mean? It means you have to have a perfect technical setup, and you have to avoid foolish errors on the human side to make sure they go through. So now we're going to get into the meat of the subject here. We're going to talk about the 4 parts of email and how they fit together in order to make your emails go through. We can forget the caviar and the Drake and Kendrick situation for a little bit. Probably won't mention it again. So we can just let that pass. All right. So we're talking about domains, IPs, DNS, and your email usage. And we're going to dig into each one. We're going to spend a little time on each one. Now is probably a time when you might have questions. So feel free to drop any questions you have here or save them for after this section where we'll get into the Q&A. Sound good? All right. So domains. Senders has found that the older the domain is, the more aged the domain is, the better it performs over the long term. Age matters, 90 days or older. So it's oftentimes when companies set up a when companies set up a company, when you're like, choose your name, they buy a domain or two. It's pretty common practice these days for people to try buy many more. Maybe they try to buy the .net or the .ai or the .co, or they buy different variations in the name, meet company name, try senders, meet senders, senders lab, that kind of thing. It's really important that when you're going about trying to set up a cold email infrastructure for yourself, that you're choosing the domains that are aged the oldest. And age actually matters in terms of when it was registered and not moved. So if you bought something on GoDaddy 5 years ago and it's just been sitting there, that's a 5-year-old domain. That's very valuable to you. So age really matters. Now, selected/undamaged, this is important. Oftentimes folks join an organization or they decide to start sending emails and they put on horse blinders. They don't think about where this domain has been used, if it's actually in good standing or not, if there's a problem with it, if there's not a problem with it. So they're not really selecting the domain. They're not thinking about the age and the health of the domain when they do it. Third one is, once they decide to go with the domain, they have to make sure, or you have to make sure that it's properly warmed and also it's properly maintained. Meaning, in the olden days, you used to be able to set up a domain, start sending from it immediately, and it would just sort of like warm itself, basically. It would kind of go and be fine. These days, you have to actually make a deliberate effort to make sure that your domain is warmed. Typically, people use warming software of some sort. There's lots of warming software out there. Some works differently than others, but largely what it does, there's a very large pool of fake or sort of plugged in email senders, and emails are being passed back and forth between them. And every time they pass back and forth, they make sure that the email is interacted with in a proper way, which tells the internet algorithms that sort of decide if something is spam or not. Hey, maybe this is legitimate or maybe it's not. That's artificial warming. And then there's regular warming, which is starting out slow and making sure you're not emailing a very disengaged audience and ramping up your sending volume over time. Both are legitimate, both are really important. So for domains, the three core things that really matter are age, the selection of the domain to make sure you're selecting something that's in good shape and that you're properly warming it. At Senders, we do multiple weeks of warming for even age domains and subdomains, which we can talk a little bit more if you'd like, before we even send a single email. And then even after we start emailing, we're being very careful to maintain the sending quality as well as ramping up in a very gradual manner. Next stop on this train is DNS. DNS, on the tactile side, it's a string of code that sits in, like, let's say, the back of your website. So senders.co has DNS records associated with it. DNS is important because it's a form of authentication for the website. It's code. For example, if you ever use something like Google Analytics, the way Google Analytics knows that the website is yours and knows where to display your Google Analytics data is, you put a little string of code in the back of your website in the DNS records. When it comes to email, there are three kinds of email authentication that matter. Everyone talks about them. There are really only three that matter at this stage: SPF, DMARC, and DKIM. And what these are doing, these are making sure that when an email is delivered to an email server, when the email server turns around and asks the question, did this actually come from the place it says it came from? It has authentication that it did. So SPF, DMARC, and DKIM matter for all your domains, every domain, and aligning them matters. Alignment comes because DMARC is a string of code that tells the recipient email server how SPF and DKIM should be with that email server. So if the DMARC is indicating that SPF should be a certain way and the SPF is a different way, you're going to get emails rejected. A lot more email problems come from this level of rejection than you'd imagine. Folks say, no, I already set that up. It's totally fine. No problem at all there. But actually, when our team goes in and looks and investigates, we go, well, actually, there's kind of an error here. Your SPF record is too long, or there's some sort of problem. So it might seem like the kind of thing that's very simple and straightforward. It's actually not. It really needs to be investigated thoroughly. And if you do notice a problem, you need to revisit those and make sure that they're all in good shape. And this goes for every domain that you're going to be using. Cool. All makes sense? I don't see any questions coming in from those, so we can just speed along. IPs. If you're using an off-the-shelf email service like Google Mail or Outlook or something like that, or Zoho Mail or something like that, you don't get exposed to what is happening with the IP addresses. Now, this is important to know. IP addresses are randomly chosen by the email system when you click send. You don't get any access to this. When you want to really tear open email and you want to make sure that you can send the email at the volume you need without having to deal with and integrate, deal with other systems limitations that they place on you, you can start to look at IP addresses and set up, configure your email in such a way where you actually can see the IP addresses and use them for your advantage, to your advantage. So in the case, for example, you were using something like Mailgun. Mailgun is going to show you what IP addresses you're sending from. So this slide is mainly for folks that are actually using IP addresses that they can see and manage themselves. They need to be aged, similar to domains, although age matters probably even more with IP addresses. They need to be undamaged, and you need to choose your IP address carefully, and they need to be properly warned and maintained. Sounds very similar to domains. IPs, though, are far more technical. And if an IP address has a problem, it's actually harder to detect it for a regular person and harder to deal with the issues that happen. One other way that IPs come into the picture, we hear this a lot from people who send via Microsoft. Microsoft, if they feel like you're a low quality sender or you're trying to send too many emails, they'll actually shift your sending to worse pools of IP addresses. Now, because this is a common practice of Microsoft, we've heard reports of people being able to appeal to Microsoft, or someone on my team appealing to Microsoft and ask them, hey, can you move us back to a good pool of IP addresses? And there is a mechanism by which they will do that for you. But fundamentally, IPs matter, even if you see them or don't see them, use them, don't use them, want to leverage them or not. They're a pretty important piece of the puzzle. All right, this next one is, there's a lot. This is a topic with a lot of nuance, but also a lot of room for creativity. Maybe a little bit later, we can talk about a little bit what's happening with email, what's working these days when it comes to this human side, how you're using email. But this is the big wild card. So assuming all the technical things line up, this is the part that sort of trips everyone up. There are 3 R's that we like to talk about at Senders: ratio, replies, and restraint. And I'll take each one of those one by one. Ratio is the number of emails that are being sent that are positively contributing to the health of your domains and health of your IPs. So if you send 100 emails and you get 10 replies, that's a 10% interested reply rate, or 10% reply rate. That's a really healthy ratio of 10 to 1. If you send 1,000 emails and you get 1 reply, that's a 0.1%. That ratio is much more strained. So your ratio matters. You need to mind the ratio. Different kinds of sending, different kinds of places, different kinds of ways. What is a healthy ratio changes. However, being aware of the ratio and how the ratio is changing matters a lot. The second one is replies. Folks sometimes want to optimize for clicks. They think, I want to cold email people, I want to get them to click on something. Optimizing for replies helps your email deliverability a lot more, tremendously more than optimizing for clicks. click is a sort of indication of interest in some way, but in cold email, replies really matter for a lot more. And the third one here, the third R is restraint. It might seem a little bit funny for a company like ours that facilitated millions, tens of millions of cold emails being sent. Actually, almost all of our clients, if not all of them, have a business case. They have an understanding of the volume they're sending and the number of replies they get and the interested replies they get. And that matches up with actual data that drives their business forward. A lot of folks come to us with some sort of crazy thing like, I want to send 1 million emails a month. And typically that's the opposite of restraint. Because when you dig into it, you say, well, what's the math that gets you to 1 million emails a month? And the math never quite makes sense because it basically is based on this idea that more email is better and sending all these emails is going to do something good for their business, but they're not quite sure what that good thing is. And they're not quite sure how the math is going to work out. So always thinking from the perspective of restraint, even if the volume is going to be high, will serve you better, especially with deliverability. Second one is direct links. Links that have some sort of ulterior motive. So a link that's meant to go somewhere and then redirect somewhere else. Email systems tend to frown upon those because in between those steps in the links, a bad actor could put something in there that could be construed as spam or include something malicious. So the more direct the link, the better, for sure. I would avoid putting in links that go to things like Google Drive or even PDFs and stuff like that. Direct links straight to an open website is ideal. And the third one here is checker, which is another acronym. Clear, honest, earnest, concise, known, and reputable. These are attributes of emails that we see perform better and actually contribute positively to your company, generating whatever outcome you're striving for. So email being clear, email being honest, meaning you're not making some wild claim or making things up in the email or it's from a fake person. They're earnest, meaning your desire to connect with the person is earnest, meaning if they reply, you're going to actively engage with them. Concise as you can be, brief, that is, fewer words. Known, if you know something about the person, feel free to mention it. People like to be known by you. And if you're knowable, like they can find you on LinkedIn or something, you should highlight that because there's a lot of sort of fake people emailing around. So a little bit of information about you or a lot of information about you to make yourself known. And then reputable. If your company is reputable in other ways, your emails will perform better. So putting an emphasis on your reputation and also highlighting aspects of your reputation will certainly help your emails perform better. Hope all that makes sense. Okay, so the last topic we're going to touch on here is volume. Volume is the thing that trips everybody up. You have to understand that volume is corrosive. Cold email itself is corrosive and volume corrodes faster. So when someone says, hey, I want to send 100,000 emails a day, either you have to build up to that volume over a long period of time using a variety of very complex methods in order to keep this going, or you're going to corrode the email domain and other systems very, very fast. So volume corrodes faster, and scaling, which is something that Sender specializes in, is getting volume above 800 emails per day, 1,000 emails per day. We have a lot of clients that send 4,000 plus cold emails per day without any issue. That kind of volume takes a certain kind of care. And that also requires the right tools for the job. Believe it or not that many years ago, you could get a new Google Workspace account. You could set it up with a new domain and send 400 emails on day one with no warm up, nothing, and you'd have fantastic deliverability. That era is over. Google has decided that they're not the right tool for cold emailing. Microsoft has indicated they're not the right tool. Zoho actively bumps people from their accounts if you use it for cold emailing. So make sure you're using the right tools for the job. There are a lot of tools out there. Some of them are better than others. Some of them do what they say they do. Some of them don't do what they say they're supposed to do. But right tools for the job is generally an important framework to go. And the third one is go slow or get help. So go slow is generally a good thing to do. If you'd like to be sending 200 emails a day, you probably can scale to that, assuming you have most of the right tools, if you do it in a relatively slow pace. If you want to send 2,000 emails a day, as well, you need to go slow. If you're unable to go slow or you're not exactly sure what to do, you probably need to get help. And that's why companies like Senders exists. Okay, so now we're at the Q&A section. Let's see, were any questions came in Q&A? What about UTM links? Great question, Felipe. UTM links actually are direct links. They're not redirects. So what UTM parameters, for those folks who don't know, if you ever look at the URL of a website and it will say senders.co/UTM equals, UTM is a way of tracking clicks on a link that appends or adds something to the end of the link that goes into Google, it goes into some sort of email tracking, or sorry, link tracking software. Those aren't redirects. They actually just come along with the domain. And when the domain displays, they show them at the end. So they should not be affecting deliverability unless there's something weird about the UTM. So generally UTMs are considered direct links and they don't affect deliverability. Cool, let's see. Michael, hi Michael, thanks for the question here. All right, the question is, what is a good warming strategy for domains and IPs? What should you look for when selecting and setting up warming tools? It's a great question. So here's the general advice on the first question. If you're going to warm something, you need to warm the domains from the IP addresses or with the IP address that you're going to be sending from. It doesn't seem to do anything warming the domains separately from the IPs. So if you're building an email system, let's say using, some sort of combination of warmy.io and as your warming tool, and you're using, let's say Microsoft Mail, Microsoft's providing the IP addresses and Warmy is doing the warming. You need to make sure that you're warming the domain sending directly from that Microsoft account. If you're using some other system for supplying IP addresses that you are set up on your own, you need to make sure that the emails are sending from those IP addresses. So you're warming up the entire email setup in one go, if that makes sense. As far as choosing warming tools, different warming tools have strengths for different kinds of email recipients. In other words, if you yourself are sending mainly to big corporations that use Microsoft systems, an email warming tool that mainly has Gmail users in the warming pool will not serve you as well for obvious reasons, because you're going to be doing a lot of warming to Google accounts and not as many to Microsoft accounts, which would be less effective for you. So make sure, again, going back to this right tool for the job area that I mentioned, you need to make sure that you're asking yourself, well, does this warming pool have the kinds of senders that I'm going to be sending to? Yes or no? Am I warming my inboxes, my mailboxes, or whatever, my domains and IPs in the same exact or very similar setup as I'm doing now? Does that make sense? Cool. Let's see. Yes. What platform should you use for cold emailing? That is a good question. Most email platforms work almost identically. And from an email deliverability perspective, have no effect on email deliverability. How you use the platform and what the platform allows you to do might affect your deliverability. So what do I mean by that? Apollo.io has great data and an emailing engine. Apollo.io lets you send a lot of emails. By sending a lot of emails, you might negatively affect your deliverability, but it's ultimately based on your own actions. We see folks that we're sending via Instantly or something like that. Instantly also seems fine for email sending and delivery. Reply.io seems fine. Apollo seems fine. Outreach.io is what a lot of enterprises use. That works fine. What these systems are doing is providing an interface for you to set up and queue up email sending. They're not deeply affecting the deliverability itself. And switching from one to the other, you might see nominal differences, but largely they're all going to be acting pretty much the same. The key problem that we see is one step deeper, which is folks say, I'm going to switch to Apollo.io because they have better email deliverability, but their domains are still in trouble, or they're still sending from Google, and they're bumping it a lot into screens like this one, where you get your Google account suspended. And at that point, it doesn't matter if you're trying to send it from MailReach, or you're trying to send from Reply.io, or sorry, MailReach is a different thing, Reply.io or Apollo.io or wherever. You need to get your sending off of Google. You need to roll out a new system that fits the tool, that is the tool that allows the scale you need. And that's oftentimes when folks come to us to ask questions and get information, and eventually just switch to us. Because if not, you can have your account suspended, and that creates a whole bunch of problems for you. And also, if you have a deliverability problem, this meme pretty much sums it up. Usually these things don't solve themselves. Any other questions? This is your last chance. No, I'm just kidding. There will be other chances for sure. I got a question for a member of my team, Chris Lee. Chris Lee's here. Chris Lee, what are you seeing in terms of strategies that are working? We talk a lot about bank shots. Do you want to explain what bank shots are in terms of the email itself and what that kind of looks like? Everyone, I think, Chris Lee, is your video on as well? Can folks see you?
It should be.
Cool.
I
Chris Lee is
so.
our revenue director. Chris Lee also has a podcast he recently launched where he interviews chief revenue officers and folks who lead revenue. It's shaping up to be really, really interesting, and everyone should find Chris Lee's podcast. And Chris Lee has one of the most unique names on the planet, Chris Lee See Me. So probably if you Google it, actually, can someone drop a link to Chris Lee's YouTube link here? Okay, we got some more questions coming in. Ramp up sending, email send limits per hour. Yeah, we can answer those after Chris Lee talks a little bit about what he's seeing in terms of what clients are doing on the human side.
Yeah, so in terms of strategies, like you mentioned, that bank shot approach and ultimately providing value to the prospect ahead of time in the email to get them to engage with your email. So for example, if you guys are sending white papers to clients, or you have a bunch of white papers that you'd like to use as marketing collateral within the email, instead of necessarily using the email to get a sales call or a sales demo, if you will, as the main CTA, we're using the CTA of stating to the effect of, hey, would it be okay if I sent over this white paper to you with more information, to get the reader to engage and say yes. We're finding now, generally in terms of trends with cold email, that getting the prospect to be engaged with the email and replying to the email is a much higher conversion rate than ultimately sending them some sort of link to book a call or book a meeting or things like that. Like I'm sure you guys know with drop-off rates and things of that nature.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, the first instinct of a lot of sales folks is to send an email that's like, hey, let's do a demo, because you know as a salesperson that a demo is likely what you need to do in order to close a deal. But you're saying show a little bit of restraint and say, remember, that was one of the things, my 3 R's, show a little bit of restraint. And in the restraint, you say, oh, can I invite you to a webinar? Can I show you something else that might be a little bit more interesting or a little bit more enticing for them to get them to reply with interest? And then from there, you can take that into a sales call scenario. Does that summarize what you're saying? Yeah, I think that makes sense. Cool. We got another member of our team. Oh, so we had a question. How should we ramp up our sending email send limits per hour? Dame, do you want to answer that?
Sure, I would love to.
Sure. Dame is one of the technicians on our team, and Dame is hands-on, helping dozens and dozens of our clients with their email sending, delivery, tweaking things with them, working with them to adjust their behaviors to fit. And then, of course, troubleshooting any technical issues. Why don't you speak a little bit about what you see in terms of warming?
Yeah, so in terms of
warming, setup,
warming
ramp
and
up.
ramp
Yeah.
ups, yeah. So first of all, let me just touch a little bit for what was the question for the which tool should you choose? Generally, I would recommend some older tool that has enough percentage of all ISPs out there, like Google, Outlook, and such, which they all the companies are really not open to share, but usually older tools have more diverse ISPs, basically people using to warm up. For the ramp ups and email sending per hour and so, I can share what we do in general. And that is we divide the daily volume to 8 hours. And basically whatever that number is, we sometimes round it up to the closest 5, kind of. And what's more important is you should have as much delay on the seconds, not per hour, but per seconds, as you can possibly squeeze in within the same hour.
Yeah, so
if
distancing
it's,
the emails over
Yeah.
time as best you can is the
Yeah.
best strategy.
Pretty much.
It makes
Let me
sense.
know, Joel, if that answers your question.
And Joel answers, what is the limit of inboxes per send? What happens if I click this button? Wow, I should click answer this question live. Did something happen? I don't even know what's happening. So Joel asked limit of inboxes per domain. So there actually is no limit of emails per domain that can be sent. If you think about a very large company like someone, let's say Facebook, sending password reset emails or something, I don't know how many they're sending, 100 million a day or something. It's crazy. And they're generally sending those from one domain. So there really is no limit. For guys like us that specialize in scaling cold email, we frequently send over 4,000 emails a day from a single domain. Yes, we're experts at this. Yes, we have tools at our disposal that are better, and we focus on this much better, and we're not doing a lot of guesswork with these things. So the question is, the limit of inboxes per domain? No, there is no limit of inboxes per domain. If you know what you're doing and you know how to scale it, and everything's warmed properly, and you have a proper configuration. I hope that makes sense. Christy asked, what are tools out there for sending cold email other than the standard email providers? So the standard email providers don't like cold email very much. Probably the best strategy is to move sending to somewhere that you bear the responsibility for the sends. So you're responsible for the IP health. The problem, of course, with that is that most folks aren't equipped to handle IP address health, really. What we do is we house IP addresses in other systems, and then we put together our own IMAP server and our other pieces of the puzzle to bring it together, and then we maintain it for clients. So if that kind of thing interests you, Chris Lee from our team, Christy can chat, and you can talk about what there is. As you mentioned, yes, a lot of vendors only want to deal with opt-in newsletters and marketing campaigns. They don't want to touch cold email. That means that it's a sort of specialist service, and that is part of the reason why Senders exists. Let's see. What if I'm reaching out to 100 prospects per day via a Gmail account? I usually put them in BCC and do a blast. Will that impact my email? It very well could impact your email. It also could get you banned from Gmail because it depends on how many of those people are seeing you as not being welcome in their inbox. There's nothing technically wrong with sending 100 emails. I mean, I got an email today from a friend who runs an art gallery or something, and she sent out an email that had 100 people in BCC. Granted, it was all opt-in and everyone knows her, so it's very unlikely that Google is going to punish that type of person. I would say that there is specialized software for this for a reason. The main thing that will hurt you with these 100 emails per day is that they're all going out in one go. So if you think about what Dame just said a minute ago, he said, divide the day up 8 hours a day by the number of emails and send them out little by little. If you were using specialized software for the send, Sudhir, you would be sending out 100 emails divided over 8 hours. 8 hours is 8 hours times 60 is a lot of minutes. I can't do math while I'm speaking live on the internet. But by and large, you could probably send one email every 30 minutes, every 15 minutes, and that would probably end up performing much better and hurting your domain a lot less. We already answered the ramp up sending question that Joel had. Thank you, Joel, for being, oh, there's another question for Joel. And then Felipe asked a question about generative AI, which we can go to in a second. Using Apollo for sequencing, but sending through Google and running through the same problems you shared on the slides. Well, first of all, you should definitely schedule a call with our team. We're happy to talk you through the specifics of the solutions that we come up with and what scaling looks like. So if you either can reach out, here's the information to us, or Chris Lee can reach out to you, Joel. The Apollo is great for sequencing. Apollo is great for sending emails in that way. Typically, what you need is to beef up the tools that you're using in order to be able to send emails at a higher volume. And beefing up the tools exposes more issues, and you need more professional help to solve those issues. The way that folks try to get around this is they have more domains, and they have more age domains, and they have more inboxes per domain, and they do that juggle, that juggling act. We've seen people be successful with it, so that might be a path for you if a sort of more sophisticated path isn't doable. How do you stay updated with changing laws, ensuring compliance with global email regulations? That's an anonymous attendee. So mysterious, the person with the compliance. There actually is not a lot of changes to email rules and laws, at least in the United States. The Federal Trade Commission put out guidance, which is their sort of official, it's almost like an official blog post or something, where they explain the rules of the road. I recommend reading those if you haven't read them, seeing as the United States is a very large market. That, my understanding is that hasn't been updated in quite a while. So all those rules or whatever that they say still stand. So I would check those out. I would also read the actual Spam Act law itself, which you can also read on the Federal Trade Commission's website, which outlines what is considered illegal emailing and what is considered legal emailing. And globally, for the most part, obviously international laws and rules really matter, but the laws and rules of the country that you're based in are probably most important. So you should be tracking those most closely, I would say. And the final question, I think we should make this the final question. What do you think, Og? Og is our behind the scenes engineer here. Yeah. Before I answer the final question, though, I will want to thank our sponsors, Nacho, the Crazy and Friends, Startup Stack, Secure Labs, and Forecaster. These are special offers from our sponsors. We put them in the chat here too. Go ahead and grab these discounts and etc. These are great. Crazy and Friends is our marketing partner. They do really fantastic marketing audits, from SEO to content to social media stuff. They're great. Nacho, super interesting. It's sort of a marketplace for all sorts of data products. All sorts of software products of various types. We're on Nacho. They've been really kind to us. I think I appeared on Nacho's webinar podcast at some point. Maybe you can find that. I'm not sure if you're already tired of hearing me talk, so maybe you don't want to hear me anymore. Startup Stack, click through. This is great. It's a whole web of discounts of different kinds of tools. It's fantastic. Secure Labs is doing a free compliance consultation plus an extra seat license. Take them up on that. And Forecaster is doing a month free of CFO services or 30% off Forecaster, which is pretty impressive. So I hope you find value with that. The final question. Oh, sorry. There's two more questions. I think we have time for another 2 questions. Let's see. Most of the prospects we reach out from Apollo or similar app. Let's see. What happens if I click this? All right. Most of the prospects that we reach out to from Apollo or similar apps tend to have a business email over personal email, and there's many instances the email won't go through. How can we overcome this pain point? If your email is not going through, it's possible that the recipient email server has realized that they don't want you emailing them. In that case, it is very difficult to go around. It is also possible that your email is not correctly configured, and the higher the security of the person you're emailing, the more likely it is to be rejected. So you should revisit your own settings to make sure your SPF, DMARC, DKIM, all those things are perfectly aligned and in good standing before you send again. The third possibility is you will not be able to get emails through, and all the people that you get bounces from, you should be looking at LinkedIn and other places to contact them. That is my thoughts there. The final question is a really great one from Felipe. Does generative AI cause any triggers on email deliverability? i.e. Smart Lead offers a capability to change certain parts of the email on a random basis, change the content of the email every time. Anecdotally, people report that changing the email rapidly or varying the email on every email helps with deliverability. I have not really seen evidence myself personally. We've had clients that have sent a lot of emails that look very, very similar over long periods of time with very little issues, and rotating it on a much slower basis doesn't seem to work any worse than sort of rapidly changing. I think that largely the way the email systems are working is they're doing what's called fingerprinting. And fingerprinting is taking the whole of the email and all of the content and all of the links and everything, and they're matching this fingerprint up across millions of emails and seeing which sort of fit each other. So if you think about fingerprinting in that way, changing a few words here and there or jumbling up a few words doesn't actually change the fingerprint very much. And because it doesn't change the fingerprint that much, it's possible that it doesn't really do that much. Now, the other side of this is if the changes are pretty dramatic and it really changes the ratio, it's possible that that kind of thing, which is commonly called spin tax. So unlike syntax, which is just the words in the email, it's spinning the words, spin tax works well, could work well. I have yet to see real evidence. I think I hear a lot of anecdotal evidence, but most of the anecdotal evidence we hear, when you really dig into it, it's folks that are doing it for 5 clients sending, a few hundred emails a day. So it's relatively unscientific in that sense, but it doesn't seem to hurt anything. So I don't think it should hurt deliverability. As far as generative AI, I'm not sure what's going to happen with generative AI and whether generative AI filled emails are going to perform better or worse. My guess is that they may end up performing worse because Google might start to say, hey, if an email wasn't written by a human, then it might perform more poorly. So it's possible that that could affect email deliverability. Although, again, totally unscientific. We don't know the answer to that. Okay, I think that now it's time to wrap up. Thanks, everybody. I hope this was informative, and helpful. Let me just flip back here. Feel free to reach out to us. We'll probably reach out to you just to ask if you want a free consultation with us, chat about email deliverability and whatnot. Hope this was helpful. Feel free to send an email to me or Chris Lee with any follow-up questions, and maybe see you on the next one. Bye now.